Most riders hear the word recall and think brakes, engines, wiring, or something that can leave them stranded. But this one is different. Indian recalled the 2026 Chief Vintage because of a sticker, not a bad motor, not a dangerous wheel, not a part coming loose at highway speed, a sticker, more specifically, a VIN label with the wrong wheel size printed on it. And that is exactly why this story is worth paying attention to. Because the bike can ride perfectly fine and still carry a problem that follows it through paperwork, dealer records, resale questions, and buyer trust. In this video, we are breaking down why this tiny mistake matters more than it sounds, and what it says about quality control. So watch till the end, because the real issue is not the sticker itself. It is what that sticker can do to the bike's record, resale story, and buyer confidence. The odd recall. This one does not follow the usual pattern riders expect. Most recalls start with something you can point to: a brake issue, a loose fastener, an engine concern that shows up under load. That is what people are used to hearing. That is what makes sense. Here, it is different from the start. The issue is the wrong wheel size printed on the VIN label, not a part failure. Not something you feel while riding. Just a detail written down that does not match what is on the bike. Look at the machine itself and nothing feels off. The stance is right. The wheels match what you see. The ride does not change. There is no noise, no warning, no sign that anything is wrong once you are moving. That is what makes it confusing at first. You hear recall and expect something serious. Something mechanical, something that affects the way the bike behaves. Instead, it comes down to information that does not line up with the machine. Bike runs the way it should. That is not the issue. And that is where it starts to feel unusual. Because this is not about how the motorcycle performs. It is about what is written on it. A small detail that does not show up on the road, but still matters in a different way. That one detail ends up triggering something most riders would not expect when they first hear about it. Because it does not feel like a problem until you understand how that label is actually used once the bike leaves the factory. Wrong on paper. Step back from the word recall and focus on where the issue actually sits. It is not in the engine. It is not in the wheels. It is not in the build of the motorcycle itself. The machine is doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem lives in the layer attached to it. The VIN label carries information that is supposed to match the motorcycle exactly. In this case, it does not. The wheel size printed there is not correct. Nothing wrong with the ride, just the numbers tied to it. That creates a split between what the motorcycle is and what it is recorded as being. One exists physically, the other exists in documentation. Most of the time, those two match perfectly. That is the expectation. When they do not, the mismatch becomes the issue, not because it changes the ride, but because it changes how the bike is identified and understood by the systems that rely on that information. You do not notice that difference when you are on the road, but the moment the bike is referenced through its VIN, that is where the problem shows up. That is where the numbers matter. And those numbers carry more weight than most people think. Not because they affect performance, but because they define what the bike officially is, even when the machine itself is exactly what it should be. If this breakdown is helping you see what most riders overlook, hit like and subscribe. This channel is built for straight, no BS insights like this. And I want to hear your take to something this small change. How you see the bike, the rule, behind it. There is a point where a small mistake stops being ignored and starts triggering a response. That point is simple. If the VIN information does not match the motorcycle, the bike is treated as non-compliant. No long explanation needed. If that tag does not match, the system treats the whole bike as wrong. That is what forces the recall. Not a failure in motion, not something breaking under stress, just a mismatch between what is written and what is built. Once that condition exists, the next steps are already defined. The manufacturer does not decide whether it is worth fixing quietly. The process moves forward the same way every time. Owners are notified. The incorrect information is replaced, the record is corrected, so everything lines up again. That is how the system resets. And once that line is crossed, there is no quiet way to fix it. Because the VIN is tied to everything that identifies the motorcycle once it leaves the factory. That is what turns a simple detail into something that has to be handled out in the open. Not because it feels serious, but because it has to be corrected properly for the record to be accurate again. Why writers notice. What stands out here is not the scale of the issue, but how basic it is. Nothing failed under pressure. Nothing wore out early. Nothing forced a rider to stop mid-ride. This is not about performance. It is not about reliability. It is about something that should have been caught early. This is the kind of thing you expect to get caught before it leaves the building. That is why it feels different. Because it does not match what people expect from a recall. There is no urgency tied to safety, just a sense that something simple slipped through. That creates a quiet reaction instead of a loud one. Not concern about the bike itself, but a question about how something this small made it this far. Especially on a model that carries weight in terms of detail and identity. When a bike is built around getting things right, even a small miss stands out more than it normally would. It does not change how the motorcycle rides. It does not take anything away from the machine, but it does leave an impression. And that impression becomes stronger when you consider when this happened, because timing makes it stand out even more than it would under normal circumstances. Bad timing. This lands at a moment where attention is already high. The model sits inside a 125-year milestone, which means more eyes than usual are watching every detail. That kind of spotlight changes how even small issues are perceived. This is not a quiet release tucked into the middle of a lineup. It carries meaning. It represents history, continuity, and identity. When a bike is positioned like that, people expect everything to be tight, including the small things most riders normally ignore. That is why the recall stands out more than it should. Not because of what it is, but because of when it shows up. A simple labeling mistake becomes more visible when the bike itself is being presented as something symbolic. There is also a different level of scrutiny that comes with milestone years. Riders look closer. Dealers talk more. Conversations carry further. What would normally pass quietly now gets noticed, discussed, and remembered. It does not change the bike. It does not change how it rides. But it changes how the situation is seen, and that matters more than the issue itself in moments like this. Placed in that context, it becomes clear why this does not feel like a routine correction. It feels like a small miss under a bright light, and that shifts the way people react to it. That added attention is what sets the stage for everything that follows, because this isn't just another model in the lineup, and people treat it differently from the moment they see it. Built on details. The design of this motorcycle is not accidental. Every line, every surface, and every proportion reflects a deliberate choice. It pulls from history, but it does so carefully, without losing the balance that makes it rideable today. That kind of design approach depends on precision, not just in how the parts are built, but in how the bike presents itself as a whole. The wheel size is part of that identity. It affects stance, look, and the way the bike sits on the road. When something like that is written down incorrectly, it creates a disconnect. The machine shows one thing. The label says another. Even if the rider never notices it physically, the mismatch is still there. They paid attention to everything you can see, just missed what's written. The craftsmanship is visible. The mistake is not. But once it is pointed out, it becomes hard to ignore, because it breaks the sense of completeness that a bike like this is supposed to carry. Precision is not just about machining or assembly. It is also about consistency across everything tied to the bike. When one piece does not match, even if it is small, it stands out more on a model built around getting details right. That difference between visible accuracy and recorded accuracy is what people pick up on, especially those who care about the kind of bike this is supposed to represent. The sales problem. Step into a dealership, and the situation changes again. Now, it is no longer about design or timing. It becomes a conversation between a salesperson and a rider standing next to the bike. That is where the explanation has to happen. The recall comes up, and the first reaction is usually the same. What is wrong with it? What needs to be fixed? Those are the natural questions. The answer feels unusual. Nothing is wrong with how the bike runs. The issue is the label. That takes a moment to process, because it does not match what people expect to hear. You're telling someone it's recalled, but there's nothing wrong with it. That line sums up the situation clearly. It creates a pause, not because the problem is serious, but because it does not follow the pattern riders are used to. Some buyers move past it quickly, others ask more questions. The conversation shifts from performance to explanation. And that is not where most sales discussions usually go. It does not stop the sale on its own, but it changes the tone. It introduces a layer of clarification that would not normally be there for a bike like this. From there, the reaction starts to split, because not everyone looks at it the same way once they hear the explanation in person. Buyer doubt. Reactions to this kind of situation are not uniform. Some riders hear the explanation and move on immediately. To them, it is a simple correction that does not affect the bike in any real way. Others look at it differently. They focus on what the mistake represents rather than what it does. For them, it becomes a question of attention to detail, especially on a model that carries meaning beyond just transportation. Some guys won't care, others won't forget it. That difference in mindset shapes how the recall is remembered. It is not about facts at that point. It is about how each rider values precision, accuracy, and the idea of getting things right from the start. Neither reaction is wrong. One is practical, the other is more focused on principle. Both exist at the same time, and that is what makes the situation interesting. It also shows how much perception matters once ownership enters the picture. A detail that feels small before purchase can feel different once the bike is yours. Over time, that perception settles into something steady. For some, it fades. For others, it stays in the background. Either way, it becomes part of the story tied to the bike. And once it is your bike, that perception changes again. Owner headache. The first real moment this hits is when the notice arrives. It does not come with urgency or warning about failure. It comes as a formal message, telling you something needs to be corrected. That alone changes how it feels, because nothing about your ride suggested a problem before that point. You read through it and realize the fix is simple. It is not a repair that takes hours. It is not something that keeps the bike off the road. It is a label replacement, straightforward, quick, and controlled. Still, it requires your time. The quick fix still means going back in. That is where the interruption shows up. You have to schedule it. You have to bring the bike in. You have to wait while it gets handled. It is not a major disruption, but it is still a break in ownership that would not exist otherwise. There is also a mental shift that comes with it. You go from riding without thinking about the bike to being reminded that something tied to it needed correction. Not because it failed, but because it was not recorded correctly. That distinction matters. You are not fixing the motorcycle. You are fixing what is attached to it in the system. And that creates a different kind of ownership moment. Once it is done, everything moves back to normal. The ride does not change. The feel stays the same. But the experience leaves a small mark, because it is something you had to deal with, even if it was brief. And that visit leaves more than just a new label. If you want more real-world breakdowns like this, where we cut through the noise and get to what actually matters, make sure you're subscribed. That way, you don't miss what's coming next, especially as more stories like this start to surface. The record remains. After the correction is completed, the motorcycle is back, in line with what it should be. The label is accurate. The information matches the machine. From a practical standpoint, the issue is resolved. What remains is the record of it. Recalls are logged. They become part of the history tied to that VIN. Even when the issue is small, the entry still exists. It does not disappear once the fix is done. Doesn't hurt the bike, but it follows it. That is where the long-term impact shows up. Not in how the motorcycle performs, but in how it is seen later. Anyone looking into the history will see that a recall occurred, even if they do not immediately understand the reason behind it. Some will look deeper and see that it was minor. Others may only see the word recall and pause. That reaction depends on the person, not the bike. Over time, it becomes just another line in the record. It does not define the motorcycle, but it is part of its story. And once something becomes part of that record, it stays there. For owners who keep their bikes long-term, it may never matter again. For those who eventually sell, it becomes part of the conversation, something that needs to be explained clearly, even though it does not affect how the bike rides. And that matters when the bike changes hands. Label replacement. On the dealer side, the process is direct and controlled. There is no teardown, no parts being removed beyond what is necessary to access and replace the label. It is handled with precision, because accuracy is the entire point. The old label is removed. The correct one is applied. The information is verified against the motorcycle to ensure everything matches exactly. That is the core of the fix. At the same time, records are updated. The correction is logged so that the system reflects the change. That step matters just as much as the physical replacement itself. Everything is designed to bring the bike back into alignment with what it should have been from the beginning. No guesswork, no interpretation, just correction. From the outside, it looks simple. From the inside, it follows a clear process that ensures the mistake does not carry forward once it is fixed. There is no change to how the bike performs, no adjustment needed after the work is done. The motorcycle leaves the dealership the same as it arrived, aside from the corrected information attached to it. The pride factor. Not every rider reacts the same way to small issues. Some focus only on how the motorcycle runs. Others pay attention to every detail, especially when the bike carries a sense of history or identity. On a model like this, expectations are different. It is not just about transportation. It is about what the bike represents. That includes how it looks, how it feels, and how accurately it reflects its purpose. The kind of rider this bike attracts notices everything. That includes things most people would overlook. A mismatch, even a small one, stands out more because the rest of the machine is built around getting those details right. Precision becomes part of pride. Knowing that everything lines up the way it should is part of what makes ownership satisfying. When something breaks that alignment, even briefly it gets noticed. It does not take away from the motorcycle itself. It does not change the experience on the road. But it changes how the bike is viewed in terms of completeness. That is why this situation lands differently compared to a standard model. The expectations are higher, and so is the attention given to small details. And that connects to a bigger shift happening across the industry, beyond the ride. Step back from the bike itself, and a bigger picture starts to form. What happened here is not about metal, torque, or how the machine behaves under load. It is about something that sits alongside the machine, something that has grown in importance over time without most riders noticing. Modern motorcycles are no longer judged only by how they run. They are tied into systems that track, record, and define them beyond what you feel on the road. The VIN label is one of those points of connection. It links the bike to everything else. Years ago, that layer did not carry the same weight. If a motorcycle started, ran strong, and held together over miles, that was enough. The rest was secondary. That mindset shaped how riders understood their machines. That has shifted. Today, the identity of a motorcycle exists in two places. One is physical, what you see and ride. The other is recorded, what the system says it is. When those two line up, no one notices. When they do not, it becomes a problem. This situation shows that clearly. The bike itself is correct. The issue comes from the second layer. That is what triggered everything. Not because the machine failed, but because the system that defines it could not accept the mismatch. That realization leads to a different way of looking at motorcycles today, one where what is written carries the same weight as what is built. The documentation era. There was a time when documentation followed the machine. It existed to support it, not to define it. That balance has changed. Now, the documentation stands alongside the motorcycle as an equal part of its identity. The VIN label is a small piece of that system. but it holds a lot of responsibility. It connects the bike to registration, tracking, and ownership records. It ensures that what is being referenced matches what exists in reality. When that connection is accurate, everything moves smoothly. When it is not, the system reacts. Not because it questions the machine, but because it depends on consistency across every point of reference. That is why something as small as a printed detail can carry so much weight. It is not about the size of the mistake. It is about the role that information plays once it is attached to the bike. From a rider's perspective, this can feel disconnected from reality. The motorcycle rides the same, it performs the same, yet the system treats it differently because of what is written down. That difference highlights how much importance documentation now holds. It is no longer just supporting information. It is part of what defines the motorcycle itself. That balance did not always exist in this form, and recognizing that leads to a comparison with how things used to be handled. Then and now, think back to how motorcycles were judged years ago. The focus was simple. Did it start when you needed it to? Did it run strong? Did it hold up over time? That was the measure that mattered. If a bike could carry you across miles without issue, it earned respect. That respect came from experience, not from paperwork. Riders trusted what they felt and what they knew from time on the road. There was a time when if it ran right, that was enough. That mindset still exists, but it now sits alongside a different reality. The system surrounding motorcycles has become more structured, more connected, more dependent on accurate data. That does not take away from the machine itself, but it adds another layer that did not carry the same weight before. Now, a motorcycle is judged both by how it performs and how it is documented. This shift changes how small issues are handled. In the past, something like this might have been corrected quietly, if it was noticed at all. Today, it moves through a defined process that makes it visible. That visibility changes perception. It brings attention to details that might have gone unnoticed before. It also reinforces the idea that accuracy is expected across every part of the bike, not just the mechanical side. That leads directly to the final understanding of what this situation really represents: the sticker warning. Looking at the whole situation, from start to finish, one thing becomes clear. This was never about a failure in the motorcycle itself. The machine did exactly what it was supposed to do. What happened here was a mismatch between the bike and the information tied to it. A small detail that did not align, and because of how the system works today, that detail had to be corrected in a formal way. It does not change the ride. It does not change the feel of the bike. It does not take away from what the machine is capable of. But it does show how tightly controlled the environment around motorcycles has become. Small mistakes no longer stay small. They move through a system that is built to catch and correct them, even when they do not affect performance in any direct way. That can feel unnecessary at first, but it also reflects a different standard, one where everything connected to the bike is expected to match, down to the smallest detail. These days, it is not just about how a bike rides, it is about what is written on it and how closely that matches the machine sitting in front of you. So in the end, this recall is not about a broken engine, a bad wheel, or a bike that cannot be trusted on the road. It is about how one small factory mistake can follow a motorcycle through records, resale, and buyer confidence. Now, I want to hear from you. Does a sticker recall like this matter, or would you ignore it completely? Comment your take below, hit like if this breakdown helped, and subscribe for more straight motorcycle truth.